The final stage of an anxious partner before they leave. What if the most dangerous moment in a relationship is not when the arguments become louder, but when they suddenly disappear? What if the anxious partner who once begged for reassurance, cried over distance, and fought to save the relationship becomes completely calm? Most people assume that silence means everything is finally getting better. Yet sometimes silence is the final chapter before goodbye. By the end of this video, you will understand the emotional transformation that happens inside an anxious partner before they walk away forever. If you have ever loved someone with an anxious attachment style, or recognize these patterns in yourself, stay until the end. Because the final stage rarely begins with anger or dramatic confrontations like most people imagine. Instead, it begins with something much quieter, much deeper, and often impossible to notice until the relationship has already changed forever. An anxious partner usually spends months, or even years, trying to keep emotional closeness alive despite repeated disappointment. They initiate conversations, ask difficult questions, send thoughtful messages, and desperately search for reassurance that love still exists. When conflicts appear, they rarely want to end the relationship because their deepest desire is emotional security rather than separation. Even after feeling rejected many times, they continue believing that enough love can eventually repair the emotional distance. They convince themselves that if they become more patient, more understanding, or more supportive, everything will finally improve. This hope becomes the emotional fuel that keeps them investing long after many other people would already have walked away. But every unanswered message, every canceled plan, and every emotionally unavailable response leaves another invisible wound. Those wounds rarely heal overnight because anxious partners naturally keep giving people another chance. Many emotionally unavailable partners mistake this persistence as proof that the anxious partner will never actually leave. Eventually, something begins changing inside the anxious partner that even they may not fully recognize at first. The constant cycle of hope, followed by disappointment, slowly replaces emotional longing with emotional fatigue. They stop imagining future possibilities because the present keeps repeating the same painful experience. Instead of asking why their partner keeps pulling away, they begin asking themselves why they keep accepting it. That single question quietly changes everything because it shifts attention toward protecting themselves. This is where the final stage truly begins, although almost nobody notices it while it is happening. The anxious partner starts observing more than reacting because emotional survival becomes more important than emotional chasing. Arguments become shorter because they realize explaining their pain no longer creates meaningful change. Late-night paragraphs disappear because they no longer believe words alone can repair emotional inconsistency. The constant checking of phones gradually fades because hope is no longer controlling every waking moment. Instead of waiting all day for a reply, they begin focusing on activities that restore their emotional balance. Friends notice they laugh more often because their emotional energy slowly returns. They begin remembering who they were before the relationship became the center of their emotional universe. Ironically, this growing independence often confuses the emotionally distant partner more than any confrontation ever could. Suddenly, the anxious partner no longer asks where the relationship is heading every single week. They stop demanding reassurance because they already understand what consistent behavior has been telling them. Actions become louder than promises because repeated experiences have finally replaced wishful thinking. Many partners mistake this calmness as emotional healing, but the reality is often completely different. The anxious partner is not becoming emotionally closer because they are quietly becoming emotionally detached. This detachment is rarely fueled by hatred because it is usually born from prolonged emotional exhaustion. They are no longer trying to convince someone to love them the way they need. Instead, they begin accepting that love cannot be forced through endless patience or self-sacrifice. The relationship may appear more stable because the anxious partner has stopped protesting the emotional distance. Yet this stability is often misleading because emotional investment has already started disappearing beneath the surface. They still care deeply, but they are no longer willing to abandon themselves just to preserve the relationship. The emotionally unavailable partner often notices something feels different, but struggles to explain what has changed. The usual emotional reactions are gone, making the relationship strangely quieter than before. The anxious partner has finally stopped chasing because they no longer believe chasing creates genuine connection. Once emotional trust begins disappearing, rebuilding it becomes much harder than rebuilding simple communication. The anxious partner slowly starts imagining a future where peace exists without constant emotional uncertainty. That future begins feeling more attractive than staying inside a relationship filled with emotional highs and lows. They no longer fear being alone as much as they fear feeling emotionally alone beside someone they love. This emotional shift becomes the quiet turning point that changes everything. Instead of asking their partner to choose them, they begin choosing themselves every single day. They reconnect with forgotten dreams, strengthen supportive relationships, and rebuild their confidence. The more emotionally grounded they become, the less dependent they feel on inconsistent reassurance. Ironically, this is often the moment when the distant partner finally notices the change. Messages become quicker, affection becomes stronger, and promises about the future become more frequent. For the anxious partner, however, these changes may arrive much later than people expect. Their heart has already traveled a long emotional journey that cannot instantly reverse. By the time they physically leave, they have often been emotionally preparing for months. That is why the breakup sometimes appears surprisingly calm rather than emotionally explosive. Most of the grieving already happened before the relationship officially ended. Their heartbreak unfolded while they were still trying to save something that felt increasingly impossible to repair. When they finally leave, the decision feels less like running away and more like accepting reality. Healthy relationships require effort from both people, not endless sacrifice from only one partner. Recognizing this truth does not make an anxious partner weak because it reflects emotional maturity. Walking away can sometimes become the healthiest expression of self-respect instead of abandonment. The final stage is not filled with dramatic words because it is filled with quiet clarity. It is the moment when peace becomes more valuable than emotional uncertainty. It is the moment when self-worth becomes stronger than fear of losing someone. And once that transformation is complete, returning to the old cycle becomes incredibly difficult. If this video helped you understand the emotional journey of an anxious partner, share your thoughts in the comments below. Have you ever experienced this final stage yourself? Or watched someone quietly reach this emotional turning point? Don't forget to like this video, subscribe for more psychology and relationship insights, and join us again for the next discussion.